seen in this process is, in their analysis, there were certain things that were identified and left as unmitigated. And as this whole process has gone through, those things have been left unmitigated. And I think that that is one of the things that we should be disturbed by.
Correct.
Because very early on, we've identified issues, traffic control, this, which is part of the trucking, transportation control in terms of the subway, the tram, buses onto the island. And the two big pieces, because they've really focused only on their own adventure, that they have really kind of left us in the dark with, is all the new construction that's going on in Queens, with all the new apartment buildings, all the new hotels over there. And I think that those are an anticipatory of what's going to be happening over here. That's why a lot of this new construction has been going on over there. But that is going to dramatically affect the subway. And then when people can't get on the subway, it's going to push them up to the tram. And as it is already, it's happening. This is happening now, prior to the new apartment buildings and prior to this construction. So in terms of those issues being unmitigated, I think that if the trend is following with what we've been seeing in the last year, with all the new construction in those areas and the new construction on the island with these apartment buildings, the apartment buildings are going to be larger than what they had planned, if my understanding is. And so compilated all of these things together, it's going to be dramatically worse than what was already unmitigated.
Are you talking about the South?
The Long Island,
Yes.
the Long
Yes.
Island City Tech
It's the
area.
combination of, it's this
in
combination.
anticipation
Is there
of
a
tech
question
jobs.
there?
Well, the question is, and all of it is, is accountability.
Yeah.
And how do we create accountability in terms of what seems to be a disconnect with them, and almost what I'm getting a sense of an exclusivity in terms of their approach.
Yep, and that's very true. The reality is, this process, Cornell is not the only entity in this process. The City of New York is one portion of it, and RICC is another portion of it, and we're another portion of it. So there are four groups. There's Cornell, there's the city with all its various branches of government. There's RICC, and there's us. So we've done the negotiation with Cornell and got virtually nowhere, because the entities that would have to support us in order to get anything from Cornell didn't negotiate the things, didn't stand behind the things that we were requesting. So now the question is, do we go after the city? Okay, how do you go after the city? There's only one way to go after the city, and that's to sue the city, and that takes a lot of money. The other thing is, RICC is still in the process of negotiating with Cornell. There is land down there that Cornell needs, and RICC surrounds the land that they're going to need. So we're going to be meeting with RICC in order to try to convey to RICC some strategies that we feel would be worthwhile. One of them being, and we brought it to Howard's Real Estate Committee not too long ago, a little figure of a nail house.
Nail salon.
What's that?
Nail salon.
Nail house. Nail house is, I don't know if you went to that meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. The nail house is a real estate that is stuck in the middle of the development. And it's just a teeny tiny little portion of the development. In and of itself, it's practically worthless. But because of its location, it has huge value. And we believe that that is the position that RICC should be taking right now in regard to that little corner piece of property. We know that they have to get an appraisal to determine what the baseline price is of that property. But an appraisal doesn't mean that's what you sell it for, or that's what you lease it for. It means that's the least that you should be leasing it for. What you can lease a property for, or what you can sell a property for, is whatever the market will bear. And they have Cornell, and Cornell is being supported by the city, and we can only hope that the people who we have on that RICC board are strong enough to be able to not be mowed down by the city, by the state, in supporting what is appropriate for this community. And to use that property appropriately to do what's best for Roosevelt Island, such as making sure that we have enough money for public safety, making sure that we have enough money for infrastructure, making sure that we have enough money for the helix repair, making sure that they attach to the AVAC, because garbage trucks will be given a $300 toll every time you put one on Main Street. You know, there are things that RICC can require of Cornell, and we can only hope that the RICC board is strong enough to stand behind what is appropriate for this community, even though they are a state agency. Or
We have some questions. Let me just say that I met with Charlene in Delicato. Somebody has talked to her already about these things, and she really got it. She really understood the issues. So I'm pleased to see that. I think she's going to be a good negotiator for us. We have a question.
Well, a statement really about parking and the building out of Motorgate. I understand the crisis with construction, but for the permanent habitability of this island cannot be a parking lot. We should not have cars parked all around the island for a few pennies. Motorgate must be built out, and I took from this document of the Urban Development Corporation that planned the island in the first place. And I'll just read three statements from that tome. UDC, the Urban Development Corporation, believes it would be desirable to restrict vehicular traffic on Roosevelt Island, and the General Development Plan provides for such restrictions. Now, I hope the new president of RICC is aware of the General Development Plan and the vision of the island as a traffic-free island. We are not a traffic-free island. We will never be traffic-free, but we must not become a parking lot, and Main Street must not become a throughway. That we can still prevent. Let me read about, this is an interesting fact, that they were serious about it being traffic restricted. The principal access road to the Roosevelt Island community is Main Street, designed at a width 38 feet curb to curb, narrower than a normal side street to discourage automobile traffic and parking. UDC intended that all traffic would stop at those booths at Motorgate, except for limited 20-minute parking to unload your car. And this goes for all residents, and Cornell Tech will be a resident of Roosevelt Island. They have to follow the rules for the general development of the island, not just general.
No, they don't.
But RICC can enforce that, and RICC can negotiate deals that force them to reflect this. Now, Motorgate was built, although it is possible that its size and capacity may be increased to approximately 2,600 cars. It is expected that the capacity of the Motorgate will not be expanded unless further development on Roosevelt Island takes place. Well, this is from the past already. We have Southtown. We have 3 new towers going up. We have the Four Freedoms Park. Nobody should be allowed to take a car down to the Four Freedoms Park, except they need, say, handicap needs, but no general parking. All visitors should go to the motorgate. Might be a special shuttle that goes to the park. It might be Red Bus. This all has to be worked out. But it should not be the idea that you can drive onto Roosevelt Island to go to the park.
Okay.
Well, so in the same vein, I feel that we should not expect parking from Cornell. We should provide parking for Cornell. We must preempt this. And there's still the successor agency to the Urban Development Corporation. I believe it's the Empire State Development Corporation now. But they are still conducting projects. And part of their goal now has to do with jobs and with expanding business opportunities. They can come help Cornell. They should build out Motorgate. We shouldn't ask Cornell to do that.
Okay, I'd like to address that a little bit. The EIS, the Environmental Impact Statement, is something that can be very boilerplate, and we believe that what they did was, because we found a lot of figures that we felt were either underestimated, overestimated, whatever. And it's up to us to refute it, which is difficult because we're not professionals, but we did our best to do that. And the mitigation that they said they would do would be 2 traffic lights, one near Vernon Boulevard and the bridge, and one on Main Street. And what you have to understand about an EIS is, unless it reaches a certain level of impact, a mitigation is not required. So they can claim it's not going to reach that level of impact, so they don't have to mitigate it. We have to prove that it will reach that level. So that's the first problem. The second is that the issue of parking is a debatable one. Some people think if you build it, they will come, and others feel that if you don't build it, it'll be too much. And it would be debatable if it were clear what will happen. So we feel since they're going to have a hotel and conference center down there, the hotel managers will require some parking spaces on site. People will be coming with luggage and whatever and don't want to have to park at Motorgate and then get on the bus. So they're having trouble actually attracting a hotel manager to begin with. So they want to make it as easy as they can. So I would assume some parking is going to happen on site. We would like them to build 500 spaces on site. And they have not agreed to that. They said after phase 1 they'll do a traffic study. We feel there's enough information now, especially since in June the smart parking system will be instituted on Main Street and in Motorgate, and they will have enough information to do a study now. So we've been pushing for that.
500 spaces is several thousand cars.
No, yes, but we wanted to also expand
I
Motorgate.
just want to put this to rest, because you said something interesting, Linda. You said, obviously, the closer we are to the, if we knew what it was going to be like then, later, we would know what kind of parking our needs are. That's exactly why Cornell said that they want to do a parking study at the
50%.
No.
That's 12
No.
years from now.
They want to do a parking study at the co-location, not at second at the 50%, but at the co-location. The reason is, I asked Pete this the other day, why at co-location? Well, because the
They're gonna be
students,
building it,
when they
that's
build
why.
the student building, the students are probably not going to have a lot of cars.
Right.
So it's the co-location building is going to bring the
Hotel
cars.
goes in
So
before them.
before they build the co-location building,
Hotel
they
goes
will
in
do
before them.
they will do a parking study at that time.
It's too late.
It may not be
Okay.
too late.
Okay.
So it may not be too late, because then, before they do this, while they're planning it, they're doing the study.
No,
And they do the study.
no, actually, the study is at the 50%. It specifies that the study will be conducted when it's 50% built. Now, by the time it's 50% built, you've already gone through phase 1 and phase 2, and I just want to address exactly what you said. You brought up the GDP. You have to understand that the GDP was created in order to turn Roosevelt Island into a residential community. Okay? this will no longer be a residential community. What you have to understand is that what Cornell is building is not consistent with the framework of the GDP. It's not even on land that is under the GDP and
understand.
controlled by the GDP. So keep in mind, number one, the GDP envisioned Roosevelt Island only as a residential community. It is no longer going to be a residential community. It's going to be a school, it's going to have a hotel. A third of that land is going to go to corporate co-location partners. That means businesses, enterprises, commercial entity, traffic. We are not looking for a parking lot. You use the term parking lot. And what we want to insist on is that they not put a parking lot. Put those spaces under the
But how do
ground.
they
Let me
access
finish.
it?
Let me finish. Put it under the ground. That's why, because we don't want a parking lot, and they've refused to put it at Motorgate. They've refused to expand Motorgate. So your concept that somebody else is gonna build Motorgate for us, that isn't gonna happen. Nobody's coming in here with money for Roosevelt Island. The only entity that has money for Roosevelt Island is the Roosevelt Island Operating Corporation, or the city of New York has to be required, because they're gonna get taxes from these corporate co-location entities and enterprises, hotel, huge taxes off of the hotel. So all of these things are gonna raise money for the city of New York. The city of New York should have required, and even if it had to spend the money itself out of the tax revenue that it anticipates, it didn't do that. It sold us short. The city of New York sold us short. Your concept that ought to be, very nice, it ought to be, it isn't gonna happen. Either Cornell's gonna have to be required to build it by RICC, or RICC is gonna have to charge enough money for that land down there that it's capable of building it. But your concept that there should be no parking lot down there, we agree with you 100%. That's why we don't want street level parking, we want it underground.
But Main Street becomes the thoroughfare.
You know what, you're gonna have people going down to the conference center, and if they can't park it there, they're gonna go down, come back, and take your bus to go back down.
They'll
And
unload
that's-
their luggage
there's
and
gonna
then
be
it'll be twice
three
a trip,
rides.
2 trips.
Where one trip would do. That's what you're gonna get.
Let's open it up to some more questions. This is a very important topic and we can talk offline about it. Rick?
Rick and then Eva.
When you present information to Cornell about the health dangers that will arise because of the trucking, do they deny that those health dangers will arise? Or do
Yes.
they just say,
They didn't address them at all, they didn't deny
No,
them, they
they,
didn't.
they say that they're gonna monitor and that the monitoring is sufficient.
What they plan to do is air monitor. They were going to air monitor for just the demolition phase as is required by law.
When
And then
asbestos is
we pushed them during the final negotiation to monitor during the whole construction period. We wouldn't let go of that. So, but we wanted it on Main Street. They were not willing to give it to us on Main Street, which is disappointing. But they are going to monitor at their construction site with the idea that those same trucks that are coming down Main Street are going to end up on their construction site. Of course, that construction site is going to be wide open and not have the air, not have the channel effect.
right, so based upon,
Wait, Rich.
Start changing.
So
how they
the,
do
to,
things.
to answer your question, they believe that the air monitoring that they are going to be doing is sufficient for our needs.
but there must be a way of modeling, based upon the number of trucks that will be using Main Street, the level of pollution which will result from that number of trucks. There must be a way of knowing before it even occurs.
If you can look into that, Rick, that would be wonderful.
Well, I'm just, so that has not come up in the discussions with Cornell?
No,
Okay.
no,
Second,
it's a very good question.
Good question,
And
good
we will
point,
ask
maybe you
them.
could look into
I'll look
We
into
will
that.
ask them that question.
Okay, the second question is in regard to the barging that they have committed to do, up 40 or 50% less than what was in the EIS.
Yes, however, keep in mind that there's
There's a question, please.
Okay. That commitment is being incorporated in the lease between the city and the state.
we hope.
We're told that it's being incorporated into the lease. In the event,
No.
well, let me finish my question. How do you enforce this commitment to be kept if it's not in the lease, and if it is in the lease, how do you enforce the commitment?
You just asked two questions. Number one, is it gonna be in the lease? And number two, what is the enforcement? Okay, so you've asked two questions. So in answer to your first question, until we see a lease, we have no idea whether or not it's gonna be in the lease. Number two, we've asked, we specifically asked in the moments before the decision, before Jessica Lappin went into City Council, we brought up, there's no accountability here. What is the penalty? How do you keep their toes to the fire? How do you make sure that they're not going over whatever this number is that they're committing to? There isn't any. There is no, there is, no specific accountability. There is no penalty, and the 40% reduction is of a number that is an estimate in and of itself. So it's so vague because if you've got an estimate and you're gonna have a 40% reduction from an estimate, how do you know whether you're really getting a 40% reduction? So the whole thing is fraught with fluidity. Let's
We've
put it
asked them
that
for
way.
numbers of trucks.
We've asked them for
Percentage.
specifics.
We wanted, what will you be trucking, how many trucks will it be, when, what time of day? We've asked them all that. Did you get an
They
answer?
couldn't give us.
And it's up to RICC
Because
really to
2 weeks
determine
ago, we sent this to them.
how they
Yes,
can
for
position
7 days.
themselves. The reality is that they can charge a toll based on weight for construction vehicles coming across the helix. And here's one issue, the helix is in a state of disrepair. It needs, there's an RFP, I think Howard would support that, there's an RFP out right now on getting that helix repaired before the construction. So if you charge for each truck, each heavy vehicle going across that helix, then you are apportioning correctly the impact of every truck. And that's really the fairest way. It's not, 5 years from now, we're gonna look and we're gonna figure out how many of those trucks, what the repair issue was, how much of that was Southtown's development, how much of it was Cornell's development. Just charge for every heavy truck that comes onto Roosevelt Island and put that money aside so that you can make your helix repairs down the road when you need them. And that's really the simplest way to make sure that the helix is.
Just on the barging,
Ava's next.
just on the barging,
question.
just to
Okay.
follow up. Cornell has made the point that they're undertaking what they call the largest voluntary barging effort in New York City construction history. What does voluntary barging effort mean? Is there an involuntary barging method? Did they ever say anything about?
Of course, but my answer to that is, how many islands with one street that is one lane in each direction
And 800 feet wide.
has there been construction on? Okay, so you can tell us that this is unique, that this is a precedent. Excuse me, unique is, we're an island, there's one lane in each direction. We don't want to hear how 40% is some big deal. Compared to what? You're not comparing it to what we have. You're comparing it to Manhattan.
We'll take a question from Ava and then from Dolores. But there was their lead engineer said less than 1% of New York City projects are barge. So they are doing a record voluntary percentage of barging, because I imagine if you did 2%, that would be 100% more than traditional barging.
How many islands are there
In
that
New
you've
York.
constructed on?
Anyway, Ava.
Yes, I'm Eva Bosbach. I'm coordinating the Roosevelt Island Parents Network with over 180 families here on the island. And first
We
of
know
all,
who you are.
We
Yeah,
read
right,
it,
you're
we
in the
read
list.
it.
We read the packet, the one.
no, there's many people behind this. That's really. But so on behalf of all parents, first of all, I would like to thank you for all those hours, for those 1,000 hours, and for all your work you're putting into it. Because I want to stress out that the children will be the ones who will not leave the island in the morning and come back in the evening. They will be here the whole day. They will be hearing all the noise. They will be breathing all the pollution, and they are the future. You know, this is a very important issue. So you can imagine that the parents' community is following very closely what's going on. And when we hear that the on-site cement plant is practical, it's possible to do, it's even more economical, we just cannot understand and would like you to ask Cornell why they are not willing to do it. Because we could imagine money, but you even said it would be even economical for them. So that's the one thing I don't understand. But I have three questions. Thank you for providing all the written material. I've read all of it, and I have not found anything about three topics. So I would like to ask you if you can comment on those. The first one is the library. So Cornell will be, of course, having faculty and students here with their families. They will be using our library, I assume, with the children's programs we are having in that library for free and so on, like they will be using other infrastructure. So did they say anything about library? I know, as far as I know, the lease is still not signed for our library to move to the new place. Like, are they contributing in any case to the library here on the island? The second thing is...
Answers.
Well, let her go for her three.
Second thing is the bike sharing. As you know, the bike sharing came to New York City, only lower than 60th Street for whatever reason, but it's there. I've read in Cornell's material that they want to do a 2-lane bike lane on their campus. Are they going to help us to also have some bike sharing here on the island, which in many parents and young people population's opinion would be good for reducing the traffic because people could then take the bicycle to get to the campus. So bike sharing topic. A last one, maybe most important one for a member of my community, playgrounds. Again, faculty and students with families, they will be using our playgrounds. We have only 2 baby swings on the whole island. We have only 4 swings for children 2 to 5 on the whole island. I don't know how many children we have right now, but we have 14,000 people. You can imagine that's a lot of children. Will they be contributing a playground from all that money, which can be used by their faculty and students, but also by residents, because they will be using our playgrounds with their families, like other infrastructure. So I haven't seen anything about that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Why don't you take it? Let's let Christina answer
Oh.
that.
Go ahead.
No, yeah, I'd like to ask the leadership of RICC.
Can we answer Ava's question before we go on, Ali?
Oh, I thought you.
No, yeah,
Oh, you go ahead.
Yeah, just we'll get to you right.
Oh, I
I
thought you
wasn't
asked
sure
me.
if you were
Oh,
adding
okay.
on to her question. So the first one was about library and faculty. We asked specifically in a meeting, I believe, in this room when Kathy Dove was here about that. She said that Cornell is, there's no real library anymore. In the world of Cornell, they're using digital files for their students and their faculty. Therefore, there will be no interaction or need for any of the Cornell folks to have anything to do with a traditional library, and that's it, the end of the story.
The FEIS actually requires a consideration of the impact on the library.
Okay.
And there wasn't any.
They found no impact on the library.
Yeah.
And in fact, there's a letter in last Wire, this last weekend, a verbal chance meeting between the president of the New York Public Library and Shelley Brooks, who is a neighbor of ours on the island, committing to the library, to the new library within the next month. It's verbal. What that means, God only knows, but it needs to be codified. But it happened. Pardon me?
Has nothing
It
to
has
do with
nothing to do
Cornell.
with
Well, I'm not so sure.
Okay.
If people are bringing their
Okay.
families to the island, they will need to have their children read to.
Yeah. Go at it.
Oh yes, but Kathy
What
Dove
we're
says that's
saying-
not gonna happen, there
yes.
was no impact at all
Exactly.
in the EIS.
Yes,
So-
Kathy Dove said that the EIS says that there's no impact.
Until there is.
Correct, we are all in agreement.
We all know that their children are gonna go to our library, we all know that.
They
About
are going
bike-
to have their own children's library.
About,
As they do
No, they will
currently.
not.
they will not have
They will
a
not.
Should they
choice.
change that?
On
Because,
campus, on the Cornell
They
campus,
will
they will
not
not.
have a
They will not.
physical library.
Digital.
okay, then that changed from the written statement that I read.
No, when
Which
they
is-
talk about library, they talk about digital.
I'm talking about a child. I'm not talking about
understand
an
what you're
adult
talking about.
library. They said for children, they currently maintain on their campuses a lending and reading library for children, and they will do the same thing here they do at their other
When
site.
did they
When
say that?
did you have that information that is not known to us?
I read that in something, in fact, that I got in, it's in the environmental impact statement they put out.
I think
Maybe
that
you can
is
clear that.
old news, but we can confirm.
Yeah.
Now about bike sharing, you were talking about bike sharing. Scott Stringer, we met with Scott Stringer's office, and he is a big bike guy. He loves bikes, and there seems to have been some communication or lack of communication back in the day. I'm not sure what happened, but basically Roosevelt Island had a chance to say they wanted to be part of the bike share, and for some reason or another, the communication wasn't so clear, but we were able in this process to say, yes, Roosevelt Island is interested in being part of the New York City bike share, and they got on the map. Jeff, can you step in there?
Yeah, that's not
Thank
entirely
you.
true.
That's
So,
not true.
yeah, community board aid, this is underhandled the auspices of community board aid, and Roosevelt Island is well represented. The first phase one, because of how there's 3 phases of the bike share program, and Citibank is looking at how the expenditures will go through. At least for that bike share program, the first phase, there was originally to be 2 stops accommodating Roosevelt Island residents, 59th Street, 63rd Street. Because of Hurricane Sandy and the effects of them financially, they had eliminated the 63rd Street station. Once the bike share program goes through, we are scheduled to have roll out for phase 2, if successful, to have the bike share stop here on Roosevelt Island. And then if doesn't go through the second, the final rollout, that is in their program set for that Roosevelt Island will be part of it. So it's not here at the first, maybe not here in the second, but will be at the final bike share program. It's just when it rolls out, it's not seen as a priority for them.
It's actually a question of resources. I spoke with the president of Bike Share people long before Citibank even joined with them, and we asked to be included, and they said that they couldn't, that their primary focus has to be in Manhattan, and the other areas of the city said, and we said we will pay. We won't even ask, if Citibank comes up, we don't care, we will pay. We just want to have the same system, so if somebody takes a bike from here, they can drop it off in Manhattan. And they said it's not a question of money, it's a question of resources. And I said, well, can anybody else provide bikes that would be compatible with your system? They actually gave me the name of a competitor and said, you know, who could do that? And that guy said, no, they're not really compatible. So I'll be astounded if this bike share thing even gets off the ground with the company they're using. But who knows, maybe somebody will take it over and they'll be able to provide them, because they were so far behind the 8 ball and to be able to keep up with what they had over there.
Thank you guys for that update. And then
We did ask for bike storage facilities on the campus, and they turned us down on that, but they said,
There's one more.
I just want to say, we asked them for covered bike facilities on the campus, and they turned that down, but they will have open bike parking, so that we as residents can use it on the campus. That's one thing they said about biking, that's it.
What was David's third?
And then playgrounds.
We're still working on David's.
If it's on biking, yes.
It's on park issue?
Oh,
We're
still
still
working on
ahead.
David's.
That's it, the bike, she wants to know about playgrounds.
Right, okay. When the 3 buildings go up, there was a promise that because they were gonna be taking away some park space, that the new buildings were supposed to construct a new park. So I don't know where that is. They did a whole bunch of research studies, they did a whole bunch of analyzing what kind of park that they wanted to put in there. This was RICC. And then when they stopped going forward with the 3 buildings, that issue kind of died. But we were promised a new park. So I just want to say that that's something between Southtown, did that go away?
No,
We don't know about timeline.
What's that?
We know about that, yeah, there is going to be a relocation of this, of the third plot. We know where it's going to be, they said it's going to start in June, now I hear it's going to be 2 months delayed. We know about the new park, but that's not what I mean Cornell, and if some of that money could go to build a new playground for us, because they're
What
going
money?
to.
What
Money of the whole budget.
They're not giving us a penny.
They're not giving us a dime, but Ava.
Well, but they are building facilities for their faculty and residents and students, and they will be using our playground.
They're not.
If they have them living here,
They're not.
Okay, I
They're
want-
gonna be using our facilities, that's the problem.
yeah. So just an urge maybe to try to push for this as part of pushing.
We
for
are
the-
pushing, we have.
Ava, there's two things. We asked for environmental learning center. They have 2.5 acres of public space on their campus that's for all to share. So we had a conversation with them early on, and at the very beginning, Kathy Duff said, "Oh, great. You can talk to our Ithaca designers. Let's get going. You can, if you want to teach children about vegetables and farming and science and all these green technologies, great." And then nothing happened. So we put it into the information that we kept moving with our terms about having an environmental learning center or an outdoor space where children can learn. They said they accept and agree with the concept, but there's no specifics outlined yet, but we hope to keep working on that. And that could easily include play areas, and we talked about expanding it to much younger people. Layla is working with the Roosevelt Island Explorers, with the really young toddlers and outdoor stuff. So we still have it on the radar, so to speak, but it's not defined. And also, when we met with Stringer's office, they asked us, Brian Cook in his office said, he has found that when communities work together to design and build a space, so the town and gown, so if members from our community work as a 2.5 acres of open spaces designed that brings communities together with the developer and is a good way to connect. There has been no movement on that wish and request from Stringer's office, but I don't want it to die. We still want to talk about it. And this very interesting stats you give us about how few swings for certain age groups. You can email that to us as helpful.
Sure,
Yeah.
thank you.
And Ali had something.
What I want to say is that I'm really a realist, and I know when politicians and real estate interests combine, they're going to win.
That's it.
We've been fighting on too many fronts here. The important things that matter to us, they did not yield much on. Cement or health and safety and trucking and all that. Now, assuming that they don't yield anymore on all the important issues, do we have a plan B? Do you have a plan B? What's plan B?
We're gonna get into that very shortly. That's what I started saying with, to Lynn.
What's plan B?
There are 4 fronts,
Entities, yeah.
Ali.
What?
There are 4 fronts. There's Cornell. Cornell is not the only entity.
No. Cornell is not yielding at all.
There's
The city
Okay, let
and
me
the
finish.
politicians, no, I didn't finish yet. The city and the politicians are going to push the project. Now, assuming we don't get what really matters to us, what we're going to do? What's plan B?
Can I answer your question for you? Okay? I'm gonna try and answer your question.
If you can, go ahead.
Okay, does anybody else, before I get into that, does anybody else have any questions? 'Cause that's-
Yeah, you know what? Dolores does, and this gentleman here also.
We're gonna get into plan
And
B
Matt
for
here,
sure.
so let's save that for last.
That's in plan, so she'll answer.
Yeah, that's,
Okay, what I'd like to say is I've been to mostly all of the meetings, Manhattan Park and everywhere. And there's a subject that never came up that I've been thinking about the whole time. What, do you know the amount of rats that are gonna come out of those buildings when they begin to dismantle them? And have you discussed it? Did somebody laugh? Because it's not funny. Have you discussed it, and how are they gonna control it?
There's New York
Because I
City
see-
regulations, it's in their papers. There were New York City regulations that control that, and they will be monitoring that. We didn't have to discuss it, it's part of,
it's already in there.
it's part of the law.
Oh,
Rat
okay,
abatement.
thank you. You should have said it earlier. I wouldn't have had to ask this question. I didn't have to spend all those sleepless nights thinking rats are gonna be walking on Main Street. Thank you.
Rats in cars.
Somebody hasn't done a great job.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, about the mortgage garage, I believe that, you correct me if I'm wrong, Manhattan Park, they participated into the park and they built their own section in there and became part of Mortgage Garage, and they become responsible for repairs and all that stuff.
They didn't bring, let me just clarify something. When you say they built their own section, no, they built a section that is available for the entire community.
Correct.
Okay, but yes, they are supposed to be maintaining it.
Yeah, and I believe the same terms should apply to Cornell.
Of course,
I mean, we're talking
we all
about.
believe
Yes.
everything, yes, we all believe what's fair and reasonable, Bob. Now, all of us do.
Except Cornell.
Except Cornell, and nobody has made them do what the right and decent thing would be.
That's what's really
Yeah.
bizarre going
So,
on here.
so, you know, this is a developer that has come into a community at the invitation of the city of New York. The city of New York is gonna be deriving tax money by having them here. But the effects on this community are drastic, and it has made, the city of New York has not made any promise or commitment to support anything that Cornell is going to.
Exactly, and their survey
Of course.
is not really accurate
Okay,
because
so
you're
here's-
talking about 10,000 students population, not including the staff. You're talking about at least increase 5,000 cars are going to be there.
Well, we don't know necessarily how many cars, Bob.
No,
However, with 7,000
students,
with 7,000
you should
people,
be expecting that.
with 7,000 people, it's only, you know, appropriate to assume that there's gonna be cars. And most graduate students, a lot of graduate students have cars, they do.
That's
So-
the thing.
So to assume that they aren't gonna have cars.
The other thing is, I
ridiculous.
believe that the whole construction project should be 100% margin instead of truck.
Of course, we all
Yes,
think
it's
that.
just
One
our
truck-
health versus
one
their
truck
money.
in the
You're
morning,
preaching to the
rumbling
choir,
from
we're all
Main
there.
Street.
Okay, so,
This is
okay,
happening.
Matthew has
so
some-
guys, let's,
wait,
I'm sorry, Joyce, there's one more thing. I do believe with the population, with the presence of Cornell, Technion, talking about Middle East, all this stuff, the things that we do have Islamic community here, we do have Muslim people, we have Palestinians, we have the United Nations, mostly Middle Eastern, they've been living here for almost 30 years. I just would like the community to recognize that and respect to their existence. And we do believe of security, we want security, but we don't want it to be at the cost of the integrity and reputation of the people who live in here for years.
what?
We are considering some sort of harassment going to happen.
No. I'll tell you what Joyce was talking about.
We're just clarifying
Yeah.
this, that we've been living here, a lot of people have been living here for over 30 years. And I do believe, in support of your statement, that we need a precinct here.
You're not gonna get a precinct here, Bob.
We need to push for it.
That's
Joyce.
why we're
I mean,
asking,
with the
we have
population,
pushed for it,
I mean,
Bob.
it
That's
sounds like
why
a
we've
hazardous
asked for,
package
that's
comes
why
to
we've
this
asked for
island.
boots.
We need,
Okay,
we need
the problem with the
security.
precinct is, I'll tell you exactly, because I've had this discussion with Public Safety Department. Okay, the problem with the precinct is that to bring a precinct out here, to bring,
Wait, you guys, come on, one conversation.
to bring a precinct out here requires that you bring all the manpower, all the equipment, all of the, not just the officers that patrol the street, but also all of the administrative folks and all of the high-level people. It's just, it's not something, what do you think? The city is just gonna hand this to you? They're not gonna do it, but we have asked
There's a call
for boots.
Okay, so let me.
Could I please
Yes, Matthew has the
respond
last
to
one.
this?
Matt's got it.
I've spoken to
I'm
3
doing it for a
generations
reason,
of
Linda.
commanders of the
Linda.
114th
I heard
precinct,
you're not doing it.
plus Ray Kelly. We are not getting a precinct here. It's not going to happen. We need to settle for the increased policing that we certainly require, but that we can have some expectation of getting. We're not getting a precinct. We've gone to the upper echelons of the police force. They are not going to do it. They have more excuses for not bringing a
No,
precinct
I'm
here.
gonna take it.
Shake a stick at. It's just not going to happen, and we need to be realistic about what we can get. I do have a couple of questions that have occurred to me today. One of them is follows up with what Bob said. We've been at it with Cornell for a year and a half since they were chosen. This organization, and for that matter, any island organization, has never had the opportunity to sit down and talk to Technion. They haven't
Yes,
been
not a
here.
word.
Hmm?
Not a word.
Not a word. At some point, perhaps right now, Technion is going to be in New York. If not now, then soon. They have to be a presence here sooner or later. It's not part of land use, it's not part of EIS, but at some point it seems to me a reasonable ask to sit down with Technion, introduce ourselves, clear the air if air needs clearing, and establish a relationship with these folks. I think that's an essential thing, and I can't see why anybody would disagree with that. That's number one. Number two, this is a general development, a general informational meeting for the membership, 37 constituent members. I look around this room and I see people who have been part of the hearing process from the get-go, who are utterly familiar with this information. I see perhaps a handful of people representing the constituent 37 members. We have not been particularly onerous in asking these members to participate in the hearing process, and it seems to me appropriate that we provide some incentive for them to come to a general informational meeting tonight and another one on May 30th. And I think that this is not an unreasonable thing to do if we are in fact a coalition of organizations who I don't see here tonight.
Is that a criticism there? I don't hear.
It's a criticism of the organizations who are not here tonight and have not been here in the past. I understand that. What incentives can we provide to include them in their own best interest? They're not members, out of anything other than self-interest. Why are they not here? And what can we do to encourage them?
May I ask my question in a brief manner?
Okay.
Assuming we're not going to get much of what we want, and what we're getting is what we just talked about. Plan B, are we willing to sue to protect our health and safety on this island? This is my question to you.
Okay.
Are you willing to go to court and on the basis that it's going to endanger our health and safety to stop the project or to make them change the way they're going to construct it? Are we willing to do that?
Okay.
This is my question about Lynn.
There are two forms of
I
Plan
asked
B.
it to Ellen.
Excuse me.
We need to discuss that as a community when the time comes.
Okay.
I can't answer that now.
Oh, okay.
We
There
do
are
have a member who's said that he or she will contribute 50% of any money we raise for a lawsuit. I just want to let you know that.
So we haven't
In
thought
case.
about it,
In case.
but it's possible. Is that what you're saying?
When you sue, you have to have a basis for a lawsuit.
Health and
And-
safety.
Okay, when you sue, you need a basis for a lawsuit. And a basis for a lawsuit doesn't mean a reason, it means a legal,
Rationale.
a legal position,
Standing.
okay. So you have to determine who has wronged you. Okay, you can only sue if someone has wronged you. Has the city of New York wronged you? Has the city council wronged you? Has RICC wronged you? Has the borough president wronged you? You have to understand that the process that they have gone through, the ULURP process, is conducted as such to a great extent so that they can protect themselves from being sued. You understand that? So that they go through
No,
this
we
process.
don't have to wait to feel the ill effects of the project to sue. Many projects have been stopped before they started because of the potential environmental and health and safety issues.
Have you been involved in a lawsuit?
No, I
against
have
it?
not,
Okay.
and that's why.
So the first thing that you should be aware of when you go to stop a development is that you have to, Matt, you probably knows more about this than I even.
I've been involved in three.
I've been involved in all three also, but I think Matt knows this particular piece of information better than I do, and Linda has also been involved in all three. You have to actually put up a bond for the amount of money that they're losing by your lawsuit. Sonia, can you please not go? Because I have a request of you.
Yeah?
Can you stay for just a couple of seconds? Dolores, can you stay?
I have a meeting across the street.
I have a meeting across the
We have
street
the
at
same
9
meeting.
o'clock.
We
We're
all
all
have the
going
same
there.
meeting.
Can we finish?
Okay, so here's the other thing, guys. Here's the other thing.
All right,
We need to know Okay, first of all of you here sitting in this room, you represent organizations. You need to tell everyone in your organization what we have told you today. Don't just go home and keep this information to yourself. A reporter from New York One was out here a week ago, and he approached people on the street, and they know virtually nothing, because we haven't been, first of all, we were trying to be diplomatic and going through the diplomatic channels that were available to us, and practicing diplomacy as we should. Now it's time, now that we've seen what diplomacy has gotten us or not gotten us, we need every person in this room. Dolores, you need to speak to your seniors. Sonia, you need to speak to the entire Korean population, please. Ali, you need to speak to the Garden Club. Ava, you need to speak to all the moms. We need to get the word out. We've gotten virtually nothing. RICC has to stand up and protect us, okay? And I want to ask all of you, how many of you think that your constituent base would want a rally of some sort to demonstrate that we are unhappy and want some change? Can you raise your hand if you think your people would want to participate in a rally?
Yes.
Okay, Dolores, did you?
My seniors don't care. All they care about is the next party.
Wait a minute.
I have said things to
Dolores,
them, and this is their attitude. I'm
your
talking their
seniors-
attitude.
Your seniors are the ones whose lungs are going to be the most affected.
And my
by-
seniors also feel that whenever there's a rally, you use us
Oh, stop.
don't tell me to stop. You use us to look pitiful, or the disabled. You use us. That's the only time. Other than that, I will speak to them. But other than that, I never see anybody coming through that center, anybody here coming through that center saying hi, hello, I'm here. Do you need anything? Never. Until you need us to march around to prove your point.
Okay, and here's the
And that's
problem.
our attitude.
Here's the problem. It's because instead of understanding that they have a need and have to speak up for themselves, they think that they're being asked to do something for others, and that's the mistake. They need to stand up because they're going to be harmed by this.
As far as, look, I'm only telling you what the general consensus is. As far as Cornell is concerned, we're not going to be alive anyway, we don't care. That's the general consensus.
In 4 years,
So please,
next year they're
see a show
starting.
of
I'm
hands.
thinking about tomorrow, I might
How
not be here.
many of you would think that
I will speak to them at my next general meeting.
We heard you.
You can come.
I will.
My voice is loud, you gotta realize that. I'm not yelling or screaming, I have a loud
So
voice.
guys, can I see a show of hands? How many of you think that the people in your organization would like to get behind a rally and?
We don't know, we have to.
We have to
talk to them.
Okay.
We don't know.
Okay, so can you email
gonna
us
try.
and let us know by Wednesday of what's today? Today is Tuesday, Friday of this week. Can you let us know by Friday?
Well, could you first send us something we can send
You've
them?
gotten this,
I
you've
know.
gotten all the documentation,
It's
Ava.
very long.
And you've got to write some notes to them explaining what your position
What are we
is.
getting from
No,
Cornell?
you want
Nothing.
something
What are we getting
concise.
from
Why doesn't it
Cornell?
have
What
in
you're
writing?
requesting, we don't have what you're requesting right now. Can you
That's
email this to us?
Yeah, Eva, I'll take care of
Something
it. I'll take care of it for you. You got it.
Okay.
It's a bottom line
And
thing.
what are we getting from
Bottom
Cornell?
line,
Let
nothing.
all of the people in your
We will
organization.
forward, we'll populate,
It's that simple.
Okay,
all of
We're
these
getting nothing
documents.
from that.
we're getting diddly.
Nothing. I mean, I'd say nothing because nothing is substantive. All it
And we
is
need
is
RICC
stuff
to
that we
stand up
will need to
and-
monitor in the future if we're gonna have an expectation of
Okay.
receiving it.
So, we got nothing. Anybody else have anything to say?
I didn't mean everybody in the room, because I have support.
One more thing,
I'm
one
not
more
gonna
thing.
make things, but I
I'm
have
supposed to tell
support.
you all, excuse me, CB8, okay, the other thing is, CB8 is meeting here on Roosevelt Island, Community Board 8. Guys, Jeff Escobar and Larry Parnes and are you involved in that also? Are creating a community board, a Roosevelt Island Committee. Matt, do me a favor, can you hold it for 1 second? I'm sorry. I can't think and listen at the same time. And all of you are invited. Jeff, you want to make a statement about?
So Larry Perness and myself are chairs of the Roosevelt Island Committee. And the Roosevelt Island Committee is specifically the committee that the community board addresses all issues, citywide issues. And is also been merged with the Cornell Task Force that originally handled ULIP application. So it is where the main interaction with city agencies, for example, the MTA, issues arising with the city itself, the EDC, is where a lot of these issues can be directly brought up because we're the ones put on the letterhead that get litigated. So Larry and I were chairs of the Cornell Task Force, and now we are chairs of the Roosevelt Island Committee, so which is good because it means it stays on the island. And we'll be discussing on the 30th not only where you are all at with the Cornell project, but also all the business that Community Board 8 conducts concerning the island, including Q102, the City Bike Share program. All these issues will also be addressed at that meeting. But obviously, one of the biggest tasks of this force is making sure the dialogue between the city and Cornell remains open and the community remains open. And that's one of the first parts to do so.
And that was May 30th, Thursday, 6:30 next week at Manhattan Park. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for coming, and you please give any more